That's you, Glenn?
That's me. Commissioner Bagnall. Here. Commissioner Coronado.
Here.
Commissioner Duzan. Randy won't be here tonight. He's not well. Commissioner Elrod.
Here.
Here. Commissioner Graham.
Here.
Commissioner Metcalf.
Here.
Commissioner Ranville.
Here.
Commissioner Rudnicki.
Here.
Commissioner Samuelson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Glenn. Well, this is a special meeting. We have several agenda items to discuss tonight. First, if there's any changes to the agenda, please introduce those. I would like to introduce one. I'd like to ask for an update on the City Council resolutions associated with PDO process and powers and duties. If Glenn could update that before we get into the Inspire Littleton demonstration.
Is there an agenda? I'm just not seeing one.
I don't know if there are any copies of the agenda that were... Okay.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
You want me to give you an update before the presentation?
Are there any other changes to the agenda before we get into that presentation?
Yeah.
I made a motion. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Go ahead, Glenn.
Thank you. Well, I'll just hit, let's see, last Tuesday we had a number of items on the council, 4 items exactly. First was the first review of an ordinance to opt in the Bouxard and the Blue Ribbon Stables building. That's on the very west end of Main Street. I think it's 2670 and 2680 West Main Street. One thing I wanted to mention about that, as you know, the City Council's been meeting with the Historic Preservation Board on a number of code amendments that had to do with historic preservation. One of them had to do with the process of opting in. And our code actually is silent on it, doesn't really state what the process is. As you know, Main Street's kind of a unique animal where we set the boundaries, the opt-in boundaries by ordinance, like 3 or 4 years ago. And then properties can opt in. If they agree to join the district, then they do that. So what we did is kind of fast-track that process, bring an ordinance directly to council before they've even got a certificate of appropriateness. But that should be coming before second reading. So council did approve that ordinance on first reading. The second item that you recommended approval of was the chicken ordinance, to go from 4 to 6 chickens. Council denied that ordinance and didn't have a whole lot to say, just felt it wasn't appropriate at this time. So that was denied by council. We had an ordinance about the Planning Commission duties, and as I've mentioned before, what that really changed was set the rules for if council wanted to adopt a comprehensive plan. All the other duties stayed the same. The one thing we did take out was having to do with a reference to the Development Review Committee, which is a work in progress, and the Plan Development Overlay. Council did approve those amendments. And then finally, the Plan Development Overlay. And as the Planning Commission recommended denial of that ordinance, for I think a number of reasons, but one of them had to do with the additional time. So we came back to the Planning Commission, showed you some ideas of changing how we integrate with historic preservation. We got some good comments about perhaps the two processes should break apart. There was another good comment, in fact, I think it was from Commissioner Elrod, about perhaps with PDO's Planning Commission retain approval authority, but it gets appealed to City Council. I think Council liked a lot of those different ideas, and particularly when we started talking about the transit impact zone and the fact that that requires a lot of PDOs for really no apparent reason, and we haven't really seen in the past dozen years the concerns that we adopted the TIS to begin with. So council was really wants to look at the TIS. They ended up denying the PDO ordinance with the intent that we come back after going to you with changes to the TIS ordinance, which at this point, quite frankly, staff's at kind of a recommendation that we should just eliminate it altogether. But I know Planning Commission had some other ideas, so what we're projecting now is that we bring that back to you on May 14th. So you'll probably see an amended PDO ordinance with the TIS, basically recommending elimination of the TIS. So that was the night. 2 and 2, actually.
Okay, any comments or discussion on that update? I think one thing is before the May 14th meeting, we'll need to do our homework on the TIS and the PDO and really have an educated discussion based on what it was intended to do, how it's actually worked, and what are some of the options that, aside from throwing it out completely, what other options as far as tailoring the limits of it, the edge, looking at specific uses within that area, and so on. Let's come prepared to discuss options for the TIS.
I think just interject this, from a staff standpoint, if you take out the requirement for an automatic PDO that the TIS kicks in, the chance of challenge goes down also. So perhaps that's going to reduce the amount of fear from legal staff and quite frankly planning staff of adopting what could be zoning changes by resolution. So it's something to consider.
Glenn, how much trouble would it be to put together a brief history of issues like that have come up since the TIS was installed? Because quite frankly, I don't remember much in the way of controversy, challenges, or anything else. So it'd be useful to know when it's been applied and what the outcome has been, whether it's killed projects, it's discouraged projects, it's resulted in review that produced better projects. I mean, right now, I think most everybody around the table is working in the dark.
Yeah. So PDOs that were specifically required by the TIS and no other reason, we'll try and put together some good case history there.
And you mentioned some hypothetical situations too, or maybe even real situations based on land ownership now and what they can or can't do based on the TIS being imposed, having to go through the PDO process or being able to develop as of right. Maybe just a couple scenarios that would help us understand the application of the TIS and the PDO.
We were able to get our hands on the original staff report. And after reading that, the concern at the time was runaway Walgreens. And I think they were concerned about a case in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, where a historic building was removed for a Walgreens. And I think there was a concern that, and I don't know how to tie that back to the transit station, but the concern was that a lot of historic structures and resources would get mowed down for pharmacies. So since then, I think we've developed a lot of tools to kind of protect us from that. But, yeah, it should be a good discussion.
Will the packet include the staff report from way back when?
We can certainly include it.
That would be helpful.
You bet.
Also, since TIS is pretty big, pretty important, say, to delete, it'd be nice to get the packet earlier than Friday afternoon. Give us more time to look at it.
We'll do what we can.
Okay. Well, thank you, Glenn. Any other comments on that? If not, I'd like to ask Dennis, I think you're going to lead us through the next agenda item.
Yeah, sure. I want to introduce Phil Bland. Phil is the Director of National Engagement for MindMixer. MindMixer, as you know, is the group that we've been working with to put together an interactive program website, and it will be up and running on May 1st. And we're really excited. It's the team that is at MindMixer, like Phil, has a lot of experience working in other cities and understand kind of the issues that we're looking at. They're great in terms of looking at how do we get the kind of conversation going that we're interested in having. How do we ask the questions so that they aren't leading? How do we do all the things that need to be done? They have been great to work with. We're looking forward to the May 1st date when we start up. And At this point, what we've been doing is we've been putting together questions, and Phil's going to kind of show you kind of what the website is going to look like, and also kind of look at what the questions are. As I think we talked about last time, we decided that we were in a situation where we could probably go ahead and do 7 questions initially. We've added an 8th one to that one, kind of a generic one, because we're concerned, because Littleton is unique, I think, compared to a lot of places. Because Littleton was here for so long before there were other cities and other jurisdictions, our mailing address goes way beyond the city, as all of you know. So it's a huge percentage of the calls that we get at our front desk, and I think other departments do too, where people are confused about where they live, and they call for an issue which they think is in Littleton, which is not in Littleton. And so we're anticipating that we're going to get a lot of people who are interested, and that's a good thing. But at the same time, we're thinking you and Planning Commission and staff need to be able to differentiate between people who are outside of Littleton and people inside of Littleton, if those answers are different, and so that we can see what the constituents are and how that all works. So we're asking a question in terms of, where do you live, which district do you live in, and that's going to become an ongoing question. The other 7 questions will start rotating. We're going to add an initial question each week and go up to 10 questions, and then once we get to 10, we'll start ticking off either the oldest question or the question is just not generating a conversation. We're excited, too, because it gets to be a very competitive process, and Phil can talk about that a little bit, too, just in terms of you get points for the type of conversation you get going and how much conversation you get going. And we've actually gotten some prizes already on the table from South Suburban and other places. So there's some good things going, I think, in terms of tickets to Hudson Gardens and that kind of thing, which I think would be really fun for folks. So that'll kind of engage people. And what I think Phil's experience and the other people's experience has been, too, is that it's not that motivation alone that get people going. People just get into this as they really enjoy the process. And so we're hoping that we were able to reach a really broad demographic, partially through this process, and then we're going to look at other meetings and other ways to actually get other people involved, too. So we'll have a standard survey we'll be doing later in the process, which we did in the downtown plan, and I think those of you who were around at that point remember that there was some frustration on our part because we didn't get a couple segments of the population. We didn't get the younger population particularly. And so this is a great way, I think, to engage a broader population. And then if we combine that with articles in the Littleton Report and survey and public meetings, I think we're going to be able to get fairly good representation.
Question, Dennis.
Yeah.
The tally from citizens and non-citizens, will you keep them separate?
That's our intent, is to be able to separate them. We're also, they can do an amazing job of going through and kind of figuring out not only that particular issue, but also who answered a question this way, and then if you answer a question this way, what's it mean in terms of every other question that you answer? And they can kind of get a sense of kind of demographics. They can really get a lot of information. There's a sign-in that you'll do. If you have signed in yet, you'll see that they're asking for some fairly basic questions. They don't get very personal. They do not get into your individual address. They do not get into that level of detail. But they do at least get your age, and they get something. So they begin to, and then they see how you answer, and they begin to get a sense of how this all fits together. So we're going to be able to get some pretty good analysis, I think, in terms of who's answering and what's the different interpretation. When we did the survey last time, and when we've done public meetings before, we've heard different answers from different parts of town, which would be expected. If you live in the northwest section of Littleton as opposed to the far southeast section of Littleton, you're going to have a different set of interests to some degree in terms of your access to downtown, your access to other things, your parks. And so there's a sense that I think we will see some difference as we go through the process and be able to distinguish those and see how do we address all those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Phil because he's got much more interesting things to say than I. So,
Dennis, thank you. Great job setting that up. Thank you all very much for having me as well. As Dennis mentioned, I am your local Mind Mixer representative, something that I'm pretty proud about because I'm the only one. Our company is based in Omaha, but I live just across from Flatirons Mall in Broomfield. So being able to look, to my home state and be able to come here in person and visit with you guys, certainly is something that we wish we could do with all of our clients, but something I'm very proud to be able to do with you guys. Dennis, you did a great job kind of setting the stage. What I'll do, I'm going to spend maybe 5 or 10 minutes giving just some brief background on our company, our role, our function. I think Dennis did a great job explaining how Inspire Littleton is going to be used, and then certainly open it up for questions. I'd like to spend some time on that. So, MindMixer, our two founders had an urban planning and landscaping company, and a lot of their success relied on public support for the various plans and things that they were working on. And over the course of their time with that, they realized that there's some frustrations that come along with engaging, the public in just that way. And not only the demographic maybe wasn't completely representative of the entire, city or community, but also just the number of people that would come, left a little bit to be desired. So that's literally 2 years ago that they realized that, hey, there has to be a better way for community members to be involved in their community if they so choose. And so a year was spent with the research and development of our platform. And for just less than 1 year, we've been actually out actively acquiring clients. And we're proud to say Littleton is going to be, if not on the number, pretty darn close to our 150th community in the country, as small as Cherokee, Iowa, to as big as Los Angeles and San Francisco. So again, the only reason why I bring that up to hopefully give a little background on what our mission is. We're not, a software company trying to find our way into the city realm. It was actually developed from, people like Dennis and, those of us sitting in the seats. So I'd like to just go ahead and get started. What you're looking at is going to be a stripped-down version. This is the actual project website. So there's going to be some functionality that you'll notice that isn't on there. But as Dennis mentioned, set it up. We're really, we're a platform provider, and then hopefully a service, being able to help with the way questions are answered. And so on and so forth. And one of the really interesting things that Dennis brought up that we feel most proud about as it relates to our clients, and I'll just go into Omaha's life side, is the analytics that we're able to provide back to the city. It's one thing to know that 1,000 people are in support of something. It's another thing to know the exact demographic breakdown of that. And I'll just go in here so you can see what type of analytics we're talking about. So this is Omaha's actual site. The reason why I show this is one of our original sites, so can kind of project what this site may look like a year from now. But you can see that there's currently 1,338 active participants, and these are people that register. They must sign up to be able to participate. But we also know that there's going to be 4,000 individuals that come to this site that don't sign in, but they still view it to see what's going on. Have a male-female breakdown. The average age. We have some geographic reference because of Omaha's size. We do it by zip code, so you can see on just a very high-level view the aggregate information. And then here is probably what is most validating for us at MindMixer. If you look at these age cohorts, you're probably going to realize that the 25 to 44 demographic is probably a demographic that is missed. You could also make an argument that it might be some of the biggest or strongest stakeholders in the community as well, because they probably work in the city. Kids probably go to school, in the city. And, at the end of the day, there's a convenience measure that happens that, it's not everyone can make a 7 o'clock meeting on a Tuesday night. And, for the first time ever, we really feel that through this and through the use of Google Translate, where we can instantaneously and bilaterally translate into 52 different languages, we really feel that we now have the one platform that if there's someone that wants to participate in their community, they now have a chance to do so. I'll go into just maybe some of the different tools, and then, like I said, I'd like to open it up to some specific questions as to what you guys are most interested about. But as you can see, the way your site is set up, we're not just an ideation site. Give us your ideas. For example, I love Littleton. The question is asked, maybe it's your neighborhood, a favorite restaurant, etc. We want to hear what is your favorite thing about Littleton. We also have a polling question, if you notice as well. Those can be customized, but one of the things that we really spend a lot of time on are the tools in between. Sometimes it's not just a polling question, black and white. Sometimes it's not just give us your idea. Our goal is to try to put the community members in your shoes, knowing that budgets are not infinite, and you do have to think with constraints at times. And this is one of the ways that I think we do that. For example, this is a demonstration site. This may be after you already have feedback. And so now you know that there's, say, 12 ideas that have garnered a lot of support, but you know that all 12 can't be either financially done or whatever the case is. It's one of the ways that you can kind of put citizens in your shoes. Here, 12 ideas are submitted, except you can only vote for 6. And again, the idea is that it would be great for people to think that everything that they want is going to be instituted. But sometimes we just know that that's not the case. Same with this budget tool that was just launched not too long ago. Same general principle, but we just tie a money factor to it. So, the question was, each year the city considers several capital improvements to the old market. Please use the interactive budgeting tool to help indicate your priorities for the old market. So again, this could be as it relates to capital improvements plan, could be just general budgeting questions, as they relate. But it's the functionality and the tools that are available, is just something worth noting. And finally, as a refinement. So a question was asked here. Again, it's not so much the question that matters, but what are your favorite activities in Old Market? This is just some fictitious neighborhood that happens to be what we call the downtown area in Omaha. So yeah, as opposed to a black and white yes or no, here you can actually gauge level of support. So it's one thing to know that maybe there's 100 people that would vote yes for something, but maybe those 100 people wouldn't give up anything for it. Conversely, those same 100 people that may be the most important thing that they want in the city, and they'd be willing to, double their tax rate to do that. It's pretty difficult to know or gauge level of support without having tools like this. As Dennis mentioned, we require people to log in. It's with basic demographic or basic general information. It's first name, last name. We'll ask email address, some geographic reference, and that's it. And year they were born. And so now we're able to, the city will have access to this information at any time. We're actually in the process of enhancing this quite a bit, because as you can see, it's pretty aggregate, pretty basic information right now. But that's soon going to be changing. And because we do have all the, say you do have one issue that you want to know, okay, of the people that are 25 to 35 that live in this particular part of town, how many voted for that issue? And we're able to do that. So the question is, there's going to be people that live in the city and people that are out of the city that are still going to participate in the site. But you don't need to segment it. You don't need to rule people out, because we have all that information anyway. Like I said, I would love to field any questions or answer anything as it specifically relates to. Yeah.
Phil, do you have access? I know the mayor taped a welcoming message.
Yeah. Is that for Inspire Littleton?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that yet. That's going to be one of these things that show up right where this is right here.
Channel 8 already.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Excellent. So we're probably in the process of just getting that embedded. But, you bring up a really good point. So it's one thing to just have a platform that your citizens can go to. It's another thing, like a mayoral video or other people doing videos that provide the human element. I think one of the difficulties that people have is there's a lot of one-to-one communication. If you're unhappy, send us an email or make a phone call. It's really hard. There's not a whole lot of transparency there. Couple that with the fact that there's probably going to be some people, and I'm sure Littleton is not this way, but when they send an email may not think that it's being responded to. And this is one of the ways with those videos. Or, let me go back to just another site that we have. But the whole idea is, that's why we have a who's listening piece to our, and it may be all of those in this room, could be, the city council, et cetera, but that's the validation experience. That's realizing that there are people here that are participating in this project.
I think we plan on using the planning commission as part of who's listening, right?
Yes.
So,
Hey, Glenn, would you mind using your microphone? Okay. Along those lines, too, I wonder, the images that you use introducing each one of the topics or questions sometimes can provoke a response. How do they get selected? How do you recommend those?
Okay, so a lot of that is going to be working with Nathan, who is your dedicated account manager. He's the one that's actually providing information like that. And, that question would be answered quite a bit differently a year ago because we were just getting started, and I think hopefully that's one of the things that you guys will realize is that as much as this is a product or a platform, we think it's twice as much a service because we're able to say, you know what, this image may elicit a response that you don't want or that isn't the intended response. Same with the type of wording for questions too. But yeah, that's used, both in tandem with whoever we're working with at the city and the account manager.
We've got access to all the city's photographs. Chris and Kelly have been working with us on that too with Nathan, and I think it's a great question just because we've got to provide images that elicit a response but at the same time are pretty neutral, and so I think that's going to be a challenge. So.
Well, an example, as I saw, the question was, what do you like about Littleton? There was the image of the metal flower, the art flowers there, and I'm like, oh. I would immediately think of more public art or something like that.
Speaking of photos, something that's bothered me for years. Littleton has a tendency to show hay fields, straw hat boys fishing, farm barns and things. It ain't Littleton anymore. That's long past. I mean, there are a few isolated pockets.
Yeah.
So your introduction, could you show Littleton, what Littleton is? Like downtown, it's suburbia, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Stop along Wilson Boulevard.
We can show whatever you guys would like. I mean, again, going back to, we're only going to put photos on there that either through Dennis or whoever else is going to be responsible for that specific project or that specific topic. That's totally dictated by you guys.
I know.
So yeah, that's
more than you.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
One thing we could do too is we can change this as we go along. If we suddenly realize we've made a mistake and something's on there, it's eliciting responses specific to that. We certainly can shift that. It's very flexible, which is nice.
Remembering that we're trying to invite reflections from the community on what their vision of the community is, not tell them this is the way it is. So maybe showing the diversity of Littleton, including some of those fields and the fishing down along the river and that sort of
In
thing.
the past, it's always been dominating, and like the old calendars.
Yeah, I hear you.
Second, just questions on your the amount of people in the Omaha project, 1,300 and loose change out of a city of that size. That seems a little bit disappointing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. But it also kind of depends on the context that I think you're comparing that to. We know that they have 12 to 13 times the amount of participation that they had for all of their public meetings the prior year before they launched the site. So is it perfect? Absolutely not. Are there still going to be people out there that choose not to participate or are going to do it on other avenues? Absolutely. But the fact that there hasn't been one project that we've done that hasn't had at least tenfold the amount of unique individuals participating, I think is why we're here. Of course, we'd like to see more. There's, Barnesville, Massachusetts is a great example. It's a town of 40,000 people, and they have a huge amount of participation. But a lot of it goes to how you market it, having topics that are relevant, having people participate in ways that aren't just generated by this website. That's going to be, I think, the real factor on how much participation happens. Yeah.
Dennis, what was our response on the written survey 3 years ago? 5%, 4%?
Yeah, it was pretty high. It was. It sounds low when you think about it, but you talk to the surveyors, it's exceedingly high.
That's high.
It was very high, and I would anticipate we'll have that again, just because.
Disappointing.
Yeah, we'd prefer more, but I think we'll get pretty high participation again, just because I think we are a pretty strong community. If you get to the community the size of Omaha, it's much harder for people to relate. I think Littleton's a good size for people to kind of feel like they could have an impact and can participate. So I would anticipate we'll have a higher percentage.
And just to speak a little bit more on that, that's really interesting that you bring up size as it relates to a percentage. City of Los Angeles, I think, has less participants than Omaha, but they have very real issues. One of them is a mobility issue. But we, I guess, come back to the fact that maybe a city of that size has so many other things, as long as their trash is picked up and as long as they feel relatively safe, and maybe they don't care as much as a town the size of Littleton. Yeah. And one last thing as it relates to this platform, and that's just the simple fact that there's going to be tangential benefits to your website. What I mean by that is there may be people that come for a transportation issue, but then realize that a park is being considered in their neighborhood that they probably never would have known about. That's why our average user, after they sign in, spends 11 minutes on our site, which is 4 or 5 times the industry average of a site or an engagement site like this.
How often do they come back?
It's going to depend on every community. I can certainly get you that information. We have people that log in many times a day. Yeah, I bet you guys know in this community who those will be, right?
I can see her now. In a lot of ways, this is going to be like any other conversation or a blog site. It's going to depend on the input that comes in, the responses, the activity, the interest that's generated. So the community is going to determine whether it's going to be useful or used or not. And that may vary with the subjects or the questions we put on there or how we follow up on those questions. So to a certain degree, we can control our own destiny for good or bad.
Which is a great lead-in, and I think Phil's going to say the same thing, is that we're hoping that you can help market this to the extent you can. We actually have some posters, we have some cards. Get your friends to sign up. As people who are listening, you and staff and City Council and Planning Commission, we want to be on there watching it, but we can't participate ourselves just because we want to make sure we're really hearing from everybody. So we want you all to register as soon as you can, but just remember, we're all going to be just kind of watching it instead of actually, as tempting as it would be to chime in, we can't chime in.
We're collecting their email information. Are we communicating back to them? Is there communication that goes back and forth?
Yes, so there is. One thing that Dennis just reminded me of is that this isn't just a one-way communication platform. Depending on who's involved in the project, could be Dennis himself, whatever the case is, say, this could be a real example. Say there are 50 people that are in support of widening Jones Street. But they already know that, or excuse me, they don't know, but you guys all know that that's already part of the capital improvements plan for next year. That may be a good time for Dennis to log, you can actually make inline responses. Say, hey, here's a link to the capital improvements plan. It's already going to be done. We really appreciate your support. What's really interesting is that it's not necessarily that people want all of their ideas implemented. It's the fact that they finally feel like they have a voice and that people are listening that is most important to them. I think that is just one example that more than likely will happen. This isn't just a collection of a whole bunch of different ideas and people supporting ideas or whatever the case is.
So as soon as they sign up, is there an immediate response back to them that they now have a login?
Yep, that's exactly right. They have a login. Also, we'll give them, here, let me see if I can find that.
Do we also have the capability to send blasts when we have new surveys we want to conduct?
Absolutely. So if I come up with an idea and all of you guys vote on that idea and there's a status change or something different happens with that, an email will go out to all the people that have participated in that one topic. For the same way that this is a way that we keep ideas fresh, and there's going to be things that engage citizens more than other things. So say if I register but there's nothing that really excites me, but the fact that I register, and then as soon as new topics come up or new categories come up, I'll get an email just alerting me of, hey, here are 2 new topics that are being discussed. We'd love your input. So this is what...
And one more question. Can I go in, if I've got too many emails coming, can I go in and shut that off?
Absolutely. Yes. So this is what users will get as soon as they sign up. This is also something that we're in the process of refining a little bit, but the general principles are the same. Yeah, so our users have full capability to get every email that we're going to send out or no emails at all. Just know that that's a possibility that they have.
And can they pick and choose of the other ideas out there, or do they just get all or none?
No. You can choose. So we're actually in the process, and what Dennis was talking to is not only providing you a demographic information, but also online persona information. So, we may know that 25 to 35-year-olds that live in this part of town may support, bike lane issues and are in favor of smoking bans, where, this part of town may be in favor of, safety or whatever the case is. But that's one of the ways that you can pick and choose what type of topics or what things you're interested in.
How do you determine their geographic location in the city?
It's going to be on the login question, and
do they give their address? I thought they don't give their address. They give a...
So it could be zip code, it could be neighborhood. It's going to be totally up.
Okay. So how will we do that?
We're going to do council district, as part of
We'll
that.
have a map with,
that
Because we really,
dividing lines.
again, we're kind of unique. Whereas Omaha has all these zip codes which are just Omaha. We have one that's just Omaha, which is Littleton, wherever we are.
Right.
And then we have all these other zip codes which are partially Littleton and partially Jefferson County, partially Arapahoe County, partially Douglas County. So we have to kind of find another question, which is why we've got that first question on there, is which council district do you live in, so we can get a little bit more geographic sense of...
Dennis, if we're going to show a map anyway, then why something as arbitrary as council districts? Couldn't we break it down into more neighborhoods to which people have more affinity? I mean, council district can be pretty big.
Yeah, we kind of debated that, and we kind of thought that it gives you at least quadrants, gives you a general section, and we didn't know if people were going to be comfortable getting to the level of detail of living in a particular neighborhood. We didn't know if they could define it closely. Plus, we don't want to really discourage people from outside the city from participating. We just want to know who they are, I guess, which is which. So it's a trade, but we'll certainly think about that again in terms of if we need to get more specific, and we might come back and redo that.
Phil, a lot of this is Foursquare based, isn't it? We're just not using the GPS locator functions?
I'm not terribly familiar with Foursquare, other than, it seems like my sister, who may be a little bit more technologically
And I'm not either, so
savvy.
I'm going to exceed my technical limit here very quickly. But that's basically the application where somebody can say, okay, I'm here, where's the nearest Chinese restaurant? And it can give you the feedback on your smartphone, that sort of thing. But it's a geolocator function. And I'm just wondering, without pinning them down to, we know where you live, we're going to come after you, if we could at least by zone, by grid reference or something, nail it down. Because when we start getting into the questions about livable neighborhoods and what they like about their neighborhood, what they change about their neighborhood, if we can't tell the far northwest end of District 1 from the far southeast end, we're going to be spinning our wheels.
Although something else to
I agree with that. It
consider.
feels like too much distance.
I know, but I think something else we'll have to, and maybe we'll learn over time as well, is if then you narrow it down so much and you only get 3 responses there, then you can't really do much with 3. So there is a balance of, what's the right level of volume for it to be information that's usable.
Somebody in, who lives over by Stern Park to speak for somebody who lives in, where my parents live out in South Park. It's just a totally different neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, if in fact you've broken it down so much you get minor numbers of responses, fine, but at least you know that he's right. If you get 3 from this neighborhood, but 30 from outside the neighborhood, that doesn't tell you anything about that neighborhood. The 30 don't tell you anything. It boosts your numbers, but it doesn't give you any meaningful information. So at least if we have an ability to localize it, we can start finding out, for one thing, what people think of as their neighborhood. And Dennis in particular has heard me say this a million times in the last 4 years. Some people think of the neighborhood as the houses they can see. Other people think of it as an entire section of the city. It'd be helpful to find out who sees it which way.
Is that something that could be adjusted as we get farther into it? Because I tend to agree. I mean, it's also sort of a understanding your city tool where, the comp plan has neighborhood identities that I wasn't familiar with before 2 or 3 years ago when I joined the commission. And it's an opportunity, well, hey, I'm part of this neighborhood. It's called the Stern Park neighborhood. Maybe it gives it more of a sense of an identity. And that's a place to start. But there may be too many neighborhoods in here to start with.
If someone doesn't sign up and give their email address, can they still make comments on this site?
No.
So
That's going to be one of the 5. I mean, we know if we add any more than 5, we include a whole bunch of optional fields. We know that over half of our participants are going to fill out those optional fields too, like phone number, you know, and a whole bunch of other things. But email is, because this is a web-based platform, that's one of the ways that we confirm their identity. They can't participate. And we actually don't allow any anonymous participation going back to the sign-in thing. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, you know, I don't know if they still have the comment thread at the Denver Post. That's, you know, we try to keep people from the courageous anonymous posters coming in and taking things a little bit off topic or making things personal or saying things.
Are you
that
guys
they-
managing that? So the comments that are coming in, are you?
So all the content moderation is done by us, and there's really 3 levels of that. There's, sad to say, but there's going to be 1,000 words and counting with every 4-letter word and every variation that is a red letter or a red flag. What happens there is, because we are an official public record form, and we do archive all the data that we can export to you guys, or you guys can do as well at any time. How that would appear is if it was, you know, this bleeping street, just this street would get posted. You know, obviously the city would get the unedited version, so would we, and then an email goes out saying, you know, this violated one of your 3 user agreements, and that is to be appropriate, and this isn't. If it happens again, you're not going to be allowed to participate anymore. It's really interesting. We have tens of thousands of users across the country, and the only person that we've ever had to kick off of our system was someone that created 15 different users from the same IP address. All in support of a cycling issue, go figure. But yeah, see, and that, again, that's one of the things, you know, this is obviously the user side of it. The technical side and how this platform was built was pretty intuitive, so we know where people are coming from. If it is Mike's bike blog, hey, go support this. We know if they come from Facebook, we know all that stuff. But in every single case that we've had inappropriateness, you know, there's been an email response back from them saying, oops, sorry, we didn't know that anyone was listening, or we're sorry because it was a late night at the bar. You know, who knows what their excuse was, but we haven't had to kick anyone off for that. You know, and the second level, I'll just go through these real quick. The second level, or yellow flag, that's for words like stupid. Could be definitely inappropriate, but all that does is just notify us before it posts to the site to take a look at it. If we have any questions, we give our client a call. And then the third is, you know, same as YouTube. If 2 users flag one comment for being negative or personal or non-constructive, which are the only 3 rules that we have for participation, then that comes down for our review as well.
With the constantly expanding catalog of abbreviations on email and Twitter, you have your work cut out for you.
Oh, that's why there's 1,000. There were, you know, only 700 a couple months ago.
So can people identify themselves as people who work in Littleton rather than live in Littleton, so we can measure that demographic?
Yeah, that would be just another additional question that you'd ask on the sign-in page. That would be really important.
I think we should measure that too
as well.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
actually.
Excuse me. Can we get back to the sub-areas here? I think we're leaving the question dangling, and I don't like it. We have 4 council districts.
Yes.
I can't see us doing 20 sub-areas. That's too much.
Yep.
I could see perhaps 8 to 10 sub-areas to divide the city up a little bit more. I would like to get a consensus from the Planning Commission as to how we would like to see it done up front, not down the road, but up front.
I think it's better to do it up front. I think if you don't, you can't go back and sort of
Right.
put the problem back in the box if you've missed out on it.
To use the existing districts as a benchmark would probably be a good idea, but then A, B, and C them based on a criteria, whether that be a square mile footprint or number of rooftops footprints or just sheer population footprint, some sort of objective criteria that 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D.
No, just
I like that approach.
I could just see, keep it simple, stupid. Just kiss it. Just we have 8 or 10 districts, period.
You know, you have 4,
You need a
do
A
3,
sub 3.
separation of 3 in each of the 4.
Sorry?
3 sections in each of the 4.
Now, if you want to do, at least I get what I'd
I
like.
think
those 4
whatever-
districts.
I think whatever I'm actually in favor of keeping it as is. And before, I'm not digressing from this question, but I do want to I want to come back to my comment about volume. So at what So when you look at this analysis, and we had a lot of discussion and we shared what is quantitative versus qualitative. So when you look at this, are you defining this as quantitative research or qualitative?
It's going to be dependent on the question and the type of engagement tool, the 5 different tools that we use. So
Okay.
When you're asking for ideas, like most of your questions are going to be set up, you'll not only be able to tell how many people support my idea, say I come up with, some idea, but you'll also be able to see the comments, and again, this is a project site, so you can't see, but how many comments and the various collaboration and refinement that happens within that as well. Obviously, a polling question is going to be a little bit more, quantitative, where comments and feedback and seeing your citizens all engaging and refining and collaborating together and agreeing or disagreeing, but coming up with constructive ideas is going to be the other side of that.
And so the reason I was asking that, I mean, that kind of comes back to, do you want just more volume, therefore there's more basis to our conclusion on a particular subject, and therefore that would put us in the position of saying, a bigger area would make more sense. So considering that it's not both, I don't know that I can draw that conclusion. So if we were to, just to put a scenario out there, if we were to make 8 sections or whatever the magic number is, what would you do with that one comment out of the southeast corner of the city? So is it actionable? So when we break down into sections, what is actionable about the value of defining what those sections are?
Yep, so that's obviously going to be dependent on our client. If they want, in this case, say maybe 4 districts is too broad, or maybe 1 zip code is too broad, and having 8 or 3 sections within those 4, it just gives you a chance to hyper-localize the amount of information that you're getting. But all that is going to be done on the sign-in anyway. So there still may be people that live outside of a certain area, but their feedback may still be valid because they may work in the area where this question is specific to. Am I answering your question correctly? Think of it as we're able to break down, as far as the geographic question that is asked when people log on, as long as we have whatever information it is that the city is looking for, we're able to do that. It doesn't have to be that black and white.
And I think, that question's probably posed to ourselves more than it is to you. I know that you can do whatever we want to do with the data. You can slice and dice it as you want, but I think we have to ask ourselves, what is actionable by us getting a comment from the southeast corner, or however we define 8 or 10 or 5 neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm. Karina, this is the 21st century. Okay, you can do a lot of things with data.
Right,
you can break it down into little components. You can expand it into an overview with more volume, if that seems pertinent to the question at hand. But if you don't identify or isolate that into smaller areas, a block area or something, if you stick with a council district only, you can't go back and break it down. You have to start off that way and then decide at which level you want to examine that data. And one particular case comes to mind. When we start talking about, if we would start talking about the mix of commercial activity in residential areas, I guarantee you're going to find a very sharp difference in District 1 between those who live along South Platte Canyon Drive and those who are farther away in a more strictly residential neighborhood. If we can't differentiate that, and we go 40 out of 60 people, or 60 people want that commercial activity, you're ignoring the fact that those 40 are the people who live around it and depend on it. The other people are someplace else, and they don't want to see that encroach on their neighborhoods. So I'm saying if we foresee issues where we need to know that kind of breakdown, the time to ask it is now. They can manage the data. We don't have to sit there and say, well, there's one person on this block and 2 people on that block. We don't have to.
I get that.
Unless it seems pertinent.
So I think then what I would just throw out for us to evaluate with city staff is, if it's not the council districts, then what is it? And I don't think it's a magic number to say. I think 8 sounds good. I think we need to identify what is unique by area, zone, neighborhood, however we want to define that, to say, here's why it's important for this section to be carved out and looked at, and potentially there are certain questions that's specific for that area. So I don't think it's an arbitrary number. I think it's, it's
an affinity
something
grouping,
to
essentially.
look at.
I think it's an interesting conversation because I think this may be different than other things we've done. We're really looking for more commonalities, I think. We're looking for, because we're looking at 30,000 feet, we're looking citywide, we're really, I think, going to focus on more of the commonalities rather than the distinctions. So the one person who wants something needs to be noted that this is not unanimous, but I think we're really going to be saying what the majority of people want for the city as a whole. And there'll be some distinctions from, one section of the city to the other, but overall we're trying to say, what do we want collectively? And so I think that may address that to some degree, but I know we'll have those issues as well.
Well, Dennis, the problem is where you have neighborhoods that are surrounding smaller shopping centers the way Broadridge used to be, for example, where they feel more intimately involved with the shops and the people that are there, as opposed to those who live up on or closer to Bellevue, where the shops are kind of regional in nature and there's no direct affinity. You don't walk over to it that much. You're going to get a very different attitude. And if we try and boil all this down into majority rules, that's not what Littleton's all about. If we can't differentiate, highlight the differences, and celebrate those differences, strengthen them where they're desirable, and try and change them where that change is sought, which is supposedly what we're asking for, we're barking up the wrong tree.
Well, I think what we're looking for really is kind of broad direction. We're looking for, as time goes on, what do we want to be as a community as a whole, and what's that mean for us in terms of how proactive are we in doing some things and not other things. So I think there'll be some questions at that level, but I think by and large we're going to be looking for a broader issue. Glenn, am I on the right track? Or?
Yeah, I'd agree. And maybe we could just ask a follow-up question, something as simple as, what's your nearest major intersection?
That's funny. That was one I thought of, too.
I mean, you see that often in surveys. It doesn't drill down till we actually can find somebody, but it gives you a pretty good geographic area. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I was thinking, well, we put council districts just because it might jog somebody to realize whether they're in the city or not. Mm-hmm. And we run into that all the time, that people just assume they're in Littleton even though they've never been asked to vote in any of our elections. But because they have that in their mailing address, they assume. So it was really, for me, it was really more just make sure they're residents versus what part of the community they were in.
Well, by posting a map, you can do that regardless of how you divide it. And then you're depending on them to be honest about saying, yes, I'm on this side of Bellevue, not on the other side of Bellevue. Right. Self-reporting is always a problem.
If I can just back up a little bit, in terms of the comp plan process, is it the desire to complete the master plan at the broader scale at the 20, 30,000 foot level and then follow on with individual neighborhood plans that would then, with the help of MindMixer or other tools, dig down into that next level of detail at the neighborhood level?
Yeah, and Glenn can respond to this better than I, but I think the intent that's been discussed with council is to do that, to look at what issues are raised. We know, for example, that there may be issues where we're seeing change. Where are there questions that are going to come up that you need an answer and City Council needs an answer? And anticipation is that would be along Santa Fe, so along the major corridors, Broadway and Santa Fe and Littleton Boulevard. Those are probably the most challenging areas, just like you did downtown, because there were a lot of questions without a lot of direction. And then I think we have to see what happens with the neighborhoods. My thought still is that there's so many similarities with our neighborhoods that we've got a few key issues, but by and large the neighborhoods are pretty good shape. We've got zoning which is appropriate to them. We're not going to see major redevelopment in any neighborhoods, which is totally inconsistent with what's there now. It's not like we've got zoning which is going to allow 3 times the density or a different type of use, which just doesn't happen in Littleton. We're in pretty good shape. So it's more on the edges, where we see that transition and where we see conflicts. We're in pretty good shape even for traffic for the most part, because Littleton has had a policy for years, which is a good news, bad news, but we've got all the traffic spread out clear, a few major streets. We don't have traffic cutting through our neighborhoods for the most part, to the degree that other cities have. I would anticipate that you will follow up, but I would think it would be with larger things that are addressed in the plan. It may be geographic areas, it may be other issues that we have to address. There may be other things we need to look at specifically.
But I really hope this process will point out some of those areas. So if we do hear from a number of people who are concerned about empty storefronts on Littleton Boulevard, and then we can actually start to prioritize those as we get a little further into the process as well. So I think this process might point at where we need to drill down in more detail.
I heard a little bit, I think I'd like to bring the issue to closure. I heard a little bit of difference of opinion as to whether council districts is the appropriate level of scale for this, or whether we should dig down deeper. Jenna, do you?
I like the suggestion of the council districts and then closest major intersection. I think that would narrow it down, but still keep it generic enough so that people can feel confident, or they don't have to put their specific address.
And I think it's also something, the cross, your major intersection, maybe that's even something that's optional, right? So, and I think a lot of people will probably put it, but at least it gives that person the option that if they don't want to, they don't have to, and we don't lose that person.
I know you have a fairly tight timeline to get this online and to get it in action, start getting data in. And I guess that's my thought, is keep it simple, at least to begin.
I think that's simple. Because I think, when we start breaking it into neighborhoods, then it's another map you have to put in, and you say, okay, am I in this neighborhood or in that?
It's one map either way. 4 districts, 200 districts, it's one map. You don't need multiple maps. I'm just saying, if the demographics, if splitting the demographics up into age groups is important, so you can see whether it's a broadly embraced concept or it's skewed to one age group versus the others. The same thing ought to apply to geographic area of residence. What areas are they involved in? When they start giving you feedback about that area, which area are they talking about? But you can do it up front, and then you can broaden it off and say, these opinions, these ideas are embraced by everybody across the board, the city, geographically, age group, whatever. If you don't ask up front, that information's lost. You're never going to get it.
Mm-hmm. I get
I frankly think there's probably more people who know what the nearest intersection is to them than their district.
Yes.
And so they'd have to look it up. If it was sort of phrased in the reverse order, or if the same, federal and Bellevue dash District 1, that would be a way that you could flag two birds with one stone.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It is.
Maybe we don't need the district.
You don't.
Because you can map it on your own, right?
Yeah, the
because then we
computer
can
can
map
do
that
that.
on our own after.
Computer can do that.
So does that create any problems for you guys? So I might put Prince Street instead of Prince Way, or maybe I just put Prince and I don't say which Prince it is. So how do you cleanse the data? That's the question.
That's a great question, and that would be something that I want to give you guys the right answer. I'm not sure how we would do that. It would be a question for our account manager. Just in general, how many different major intersections roughly would you guys guess?
42.
42?
Very good.
That's who's going to cleanse.
Anyway, I'm seeing if there's a way to automate the information that we get, as opposed to having it in, like, at the end of the day, the people that are seeing this information on our end are like human people too, so it doesn't have to be automated. I was just thinking if there are 20 different options, for example, and maybe there isn't.
I think it's going to be, I'm envisioning that you're not selecting from something, but rather you're free-forming what your major intersection is. And so if you're free-forming,
It may
then...
be difficult if somebody says Broadway and Arapahoe as opposed to Arapahoe and Broadway. Is that going to... I don't think...
There's another way of doing it. There's another way of doing it.
Useful if you freeform it.
Yeah,
I
there's-
do analysis all the time, and it won't be usable if you freeform it.
Right. But if you would take the city, put a grid on it, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. What's your nearest grid reference? Done.
Yeah.
I don't have to guess at what constitutes a major intersection, which district you're in, what your neighborhood's called.
A tic-tac-toe, you've got,
So,
or you can move the grids this way or...
It's a
You don't want to do it later, you want to do it up front. In
Like-
case you want to ask questions that are specific about a neighborhood, or you want to understand more than somebody's sex and age.
It shows clusters. It shows clustering. And at some point, on many of these issues, that's going to become significant.
so Craig,
Granted, we're looking for the common elements because we're trying to do the community-wide stuff. But sooner or later, we need to know, is there some area whose opinion on this particular issue is skewed way off of the mean?
so I think that we provided feedback. I guess we'd ask for a recommendation as you think about, how do we get to a greater level of detail, but how do you technically are able to do that? So if you guys can maybe come back.
We understand the problem, and we meet with them every Thursday, so we'll present the problem and
I think grid reference is a good idea. I
suggestions.
think we could probably do that, yeah. So.
I'll make sure that this is known about this evening, so as quick as tomorrow, again, one of the things that I'm challenged with is that I wasn't here 2 years ago when the company was founded. I'm newer, so rather than give you guys the wrong information, I will defer to one or both of our co-founders to see how we want to do that.
And I think what we would also look at from you guys to provide us with is that usability, right, of the site. I mean, if we start asking 20 questions, then, I stop at 10.
Yeah.
Right? So there's all kinds of science around the usability of the site and
Yep.
et cetera. So
That's funny. How'd you pick 10, just out of curiosity? Because that's kind of the number. Again,
I can't pick 42. But actually, I manage an online business, so there's maybe some random numbers swirling in my head.
That's our recommendation is no more than 10, active topics at any time because people don't make it to the bottom.
To that end, based on your experience with other communities, municipalities, whatever, how do you have like a list of best practice questions or things that are most likely to generate good discussion?
Absolutely.
I'm very afraid that we only know what we know.
Yep, absolutely. And again, going back to the fact that I certainly am confident that you guys will see that we are, much more of a service than just, hopefully a cool website, but it's being able to, help with things like that should should our clients choose. I mean, it's one thing if you guys were our only client, it's another thing that we have 150 different clients that, maybe transportation is what you'd like to discuss. Well, now we can go back and say, hey, here's 15 communities that we're working with. Here's the way that they pose the questions. Here's what elicited the best responses, and go from there.
Have you already done that in the beta draft with the staff?
Again, it wouldn't be me directly, it would be the account manager in Omaha, but I'm almost certain if
We've
that
started
was
that.
passed.
We haven't gotten into the great
Yeah.
detail to it, but we've definitely asked that question, and Nate's been working with us on that too.
Yeah.
How do we do that? He's been very happy with the questions we have so far.
Yeah.
It's interesting how different the communities are and what they're
Yeah.
looking for.
Yeah.
They have very different intent for their programs, and so some of them are very specific. They have specific questions.
Yep.
So it's interesting. I'm not sure how many are doing exactly the same thing we're doing. So we'll definitely keep working with them on that.
It's unfortunate we haven't invested time and money into GIS yet, because with a lot of this information we're collecting, we could correlate that on maps with things like when we start asking questions about circulation or public transportation. Well, yes, this group of 24 people don't think it's good because they're a mile away from the nearest bus route. You can localize that if you can do an overlay. Or yes, these people are happy with the park system because they live at the intersection of two main green space trails and two parks. It's nice to be able to have that information because it does color your appreciation of the feedback you're getting.
City of El Paso did some, we export in addition to CSV or Excel files and PDF files, also in DBF files that can be used with GIS. So again, that's a functionality that we have as well. Yeah.
I have a couple more questions.
Sure.
So the results of Omaha that you showed us, the age group was 25 to 44, which is great. That's our target segment because we feel that was underrepresented before. But that also is, to some extent, the segment that's online. So how do you manage that skewing results, because it just so happens that most people in that age group are online versus your 70-year-olds may not, but they
On
are.
a, yeah, so on a percentage basis, and it's going to be different for every community, but for Omaha specifically, it was almost a direct inverse of the current demographic information that they had either from people filling out surveys or coming to the public meetings. So again, maybe MindMixer's site is going to skew towards the younger demographic, but if you couple that information with the current,
Another form.
current outreach efforts or engagement efforts, you're going to have a pretty darn good representation of your
And we're planning on
entire
doing that?
community.
Yeah, that's all those meetings.
Okay. And so I think what would be good to see then is, our demographics of our population, and then how to make sure that we have fair representation. Yeah, at a certain point. Okay.
And is that information, the pie chart that shows the percentage of male and female and the age groups, is that visible to the users or just to the
No,
client?
just admin. So just, be whoever's on the admin side of the site, and then MindMixer staff.
I have another question. So one of the things you showed, you either love it, like it, okay with it, or neutral. How come we don't have a hate it, not in my backyard? Because, and I say I say that from the perspective, sometimes it's better to know it's easier or more concrete of what you absolutely don't want or don't like than it is to say, sure, everyone wants to be nice, I guess.
Well, because maybe all of your questions or topics are going to be well received, and that no one will think they're negative.
But we don't give them the option to be angry.
I said that in jest. Forgive me.
You should sit in on some of the meetings, actually.
Well,
Citizen that came to all our meetings about the lighting over here.
I don't know who you're talking about.
so just know from a customization standpoint, we're able to do just about anything.
But is there a reason why you chose to?
Yeah, we originally had a negative or a thumbs down button. We realized that as soon as that button was evident and as soon as people started clicking that the rest of the conversation became very critical, very negative, kind of defeating the purpose of how would you constructively improve this idea as opposed to tell me why Phil's idea is the worst idea you've ever heard. So we're able to add that. It's just, now instead of having 75 thumbs down and 3 thumbs up, now there may only be 3 thumbs up and 75 neutrals. So we think that we can give our clients back the same information. It's just how we want to try to make this a positive, constructive way that people communicate.
Now, if you have a thumbs down, is there a part in the site where you can write your feelings about it in writing or something? Or is it all just click, click, click?
Oh, no. Every single topic has open comments available.
Good. So with my clients, I don't want to hear praise all the time. Give me something I don't like so I can learn from it.
Absolutely. And we're hoping that you would get that. Again, we can add a thumbs down button or this idea stinks button. That's no problem. We're just hoping that with the comments left, they're going to be, hey, I totally disagree with what Phil is saying. Here's why. Here's what I'd recommend instead. We're hoping to get that type of interaction as opposed to, well, that's the stupidest idea I've ever heard.
Well, it seems like we're trying to get consensus and commonality, and that isn't Littleton or any city. I mean, that's planner nirvana is to have those 2 items. So let's get the negative too and learn from it.
Yeah.
Keep the flavor and the seasoning.
Sorry?
Keep the flavors and the seasoning.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Nps Net Promoter Scores?
I'm not.
It's a methodology, and what it does, the calculation is it adds your promoters, and so you have promoters, detractors, and so it's the sum of the promoters less the sum of the detractors, and it's weighted, and then that's also like benchmarked against other companies in your industry. So you can see, okay, well, is 7 good or bad?
Okay.
So I think that's kind of what we're alluding to here. It's as important to know what you are in favor of as it is to know what you are not in favor of. Just something to consider.
Yep.
And I know, I could appreciate the challenge you would face with that, but I think, unless you've experienced that a lot, that all of a sudden everyone's just like, criticizing everything. But
The book she's referencing is The Ultimate Question. That at the end of the day, it's how likely are you to refer X to someone else becoming the outcome of the Net Promoter Score. What they're talking and could be a good thing here. Something, and maybe this is a cart before the horse question, but I'd like to know a lot more about how you guys can benchmark the responses we get relative to similar questions that we have against other communities. and sort of see ideas or discussions that are going on in other like areas that we may want to consider, or the community at large may want to consider. Do you have tools or some sort of reporting that can assist us with that?
Yeah, so it's all going to depend on the type of information that you're trying to gather. If it's going to be, topic specific, so it could be open space, we can refer that way, but it also may be, you only want information based on communities that have similar demographic to yours. So we don't have anything that's readily available that I can show you right now. I can tell you that working with Nathan and our other account managers, hopefully you guys will see that that's some of the value that we're able to provide, is that we do have all that information. Not to mention that all of our sites are fully accessible by everyone in this room too. It can't participate unless you sign in, right?
So we can look at Omaha?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can look at all of our sites. In fact, mindmixer.com is going to be a pretty good place. At the very bottom of our website, we're going to have scrolling lists of the various projects that we're currently working on, and certainly be more than happy to offer you guys a more complete or comprehensive list.
Phil, my guess is, and you can find out about this, my guess is that if we did this by exception, if we got some information back or statistics or saw a pattern, and it struck us as odd, we could ask you guys, well, have you, how's this played out in other scenarios? Okay.
Absolutely.
That's probably easier than expecting them to give us across-the-board comparison.
I think it's just more the fact that we'll be able to identify, working with you guys, if there is an exception, or if, God, that doesn't look right, or why don't we have 45 to 65-year-olds that are signing up on the site, or why is no one from this neighborhood logged on? Again, it's the fact that we know that, where that then becomes clearer and makes it for an actionable item.
Try and diagnose the anomalies and the outliers.
That's exactly right.
You have one more question here.
Okay. I was curious, how often will we get updates of the statistics, since that's behind-the-scene material, just to see what kind of discussion is being generated and that direction that it's taking, just out of curiosity?
So based on just the amount of Barnstable, Massachusetts, again, you can see exactly what's happening whenever you want, whenever you're at a computer. As far as the actual analytics and specifics of a question, that is required by admin access, where they can go in and then see those reporting features. And then if you want something that's even drilled down more, going back to my example of, you want to know what 25 to 35-year-olds that are male, that live in this area, how they voted on this specific item, that's something that, just give us the information that you want, and that's how we provide it.
So I think your question was directed at Dennis.
Yeah, we really haven't talked about that. In terms of how often we're going to do that, I would think at least once a month we'll be doing that, just kind of doing some analysis, just kind of figure out where we are.
Well, it shouldn't be too difficult at each planning commission to give you a quick update of what we learned from the previous questions.
I think the more important aspect of that might be monitoring the progress in a particular topic, so that we don't wait until it's ended and we closed it out and we say, wow, how come we got this big hole in the demographics and we didn't?
Right.
If we're monitoring it, we can tell, do we need to tweak the question? Do we need...
Or ask another question.
Right.
Yeah. And I really am confident that that's what you guys will see with the Thursday, it so happened that this is on Thursdays, but that's what the weekly meeting with the account manager hopefully will address is, gosh, we don't think that this response is right, or why aren't we getting anyone to respond to this, or why is it not what we believe it to be true. That's something that we address, week 1, week 2, week 3, throughout the entire, maybe 6 weeks of a topic being posted.
Well, thank you very much, Phil.
Thank you guys very much for having us. We're really excited to be working with you guys, and thank you.
Great.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
Do we have anything else, Dennis, regarding the Inspire Littleton process?
Other than just encouraging you all to sign up, go on to the website and sign up. It won't start till May 1st, so you can't do anything, but you'll be there and we'll know you're there. I'm sorry, did I interrupt?
Well, one thing I was going to mention is, as we kind of talked about the meetings coming up, we were going to have our first comp plan meeting on June 26th at Powell Middle School. But we have had some interest from Trailmark that why can't we have a meeting on May 22nd. Now, part of the reason was we wanted to see Mind Mixer get down the road a little bit, so we have a little bit of information and topics to discuss. But also, we didn't have a public school there, but they do have a daycare center, so We're kind of keeping that in motion, and Dennis is talking to them to see if that is a space we might be able to use on May 22nd as well. So I just want to add that update that just came about as of Saturday. So.
I also had something, a question too. With having the discussion for anyone who wants to stay after the pizza and fire truck event to go into the comprehensive plan, are we going to do anything with a booth that might engage the parents with children that are coming just to the earlier pizza and fire truck event that wouldn't be staying for the later discussion? Just maybe even having like a hands-on, maybe art project with the kids, or just somehow engaging maybe the youth and getting some young ideas, but also the families too.
I certainly hope so, and believe me, we're open, but that was really the hope of the tent event, is that it's a little bit more hands-on kind of, and we have a younger demographic there, and yeah, we would like to reach out to them. And you sent us some great information, so we are definitely going to go through that and
okay, because
utilize some of those. And
I would
you
definitely
volunteered
help.
too,
I would
believe.
help. Yes, I volunteer to help with the booth and to do something interesting with also the kids, and that would attract the parents as well. So
Yeah.
I'm certainly open to that.
Now, Michael Penny, our city manager, really wants to, in this case, yes, we would have to have a booth, but most of the departments won't be arranged around booths. He really wants to get people out, walking around, meeting people, and not be compartmentalized. So with what we're doing, I think we're going to have to be to a certain extent. There's another tool that we just purchased that we're still working with, and I'm sure a lot of you have maybe used the audience response
that's really
system, the clickers. We do have that system. We have 50 clickers. So we're going to hope to utilize those in those meetings and utilize this group to create some
Very
good,
effective.
compelling questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It strikes me that we only have one planning commission meeting between now and the May 22nd date. So if that is confirmed, I think we'd want to put it on the agenda for the next meeting to talk about what, if any, role we have as commissioners at that, who would want to have.
True, it's not till the 14th, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I just wanted to follow up. I think, Dennis, you made the comment that we as commissioners should register for this website, but really, what is our role as far as input? It's more...
Yeah, you're really going to be
listening
like
and
we are.
watching.
You're going to be listeners. So none of us can participate, but you'll be getting the information. Like Glenn said, you can get it for you every meeting. We'll have some kind of an update for you. So, which I think, and then get
It'd
your
be hard
response
not
to
to-
it. And
Can
again,
we
we're gonna put
experience
the
it
meeting
though? Can they set up a test or something so that we can experience what the user's going through, or would it, if we experience it, I think we can understand and view it better, right?
I wonder if you could sign up on somebody else's site.
I mean, plan B was I just look over my husband's shoulder, but, so I wonder if there's like a test site or something
Yeah,
that we can experience it and.
You could give some input on the Omaha plan.
That's cornfields.
Okay, so...
Actually, I have one more.
Oh, sure.
On the, so again, we're really trying to take initiative to make sure this is out and everyone's seeing it, doing it. So I had asked for last time if we could take a look at what the marketing plan looks like.
Yes, and I did send that out electronically, and I do have a few extra copies.
Okay.
If somebody didn't have a copy, hard copy of it. So, anybody need copies of that? Anybody else?
I have
Any copies?
Anybody else? Okay. This is a marketing program that Kelly put together, and I've got two extras still. Anybody needs one? So, okay. And she and Chris and Kathy and crew have just been up and running already, and I think you're going to start seeing some fun stuff. Starting back in January, we had a memo that went to City Council. We've created the logo that you see here. You see it's up. We've got the banner. We've signed up for banners across Main Street. We have the URL page created, so we've got the site. You can start registering, and that was a month ago. You could do that. Front page of the April-May Littleton Report announced the launch on May 1st. We're linking the URL to our homepage, encouraging you go to the front page of the city site, and there it is, Inspire Littleton right at the top. Promotional message on Channel 8, 250 Inspire Littleton beach balls, which Kelly's planning on taking to the Hudson Gardens concerts. So yeah, at the front, while you're waiting for the concert to start, we'll have the Inspire Littleton beach balls throwing around and other places we can do
What
that.
happens during the concert to the beach balls?
I don't know. Or something. We're checking with yes. Kelly's got this okayed by Hudson Gardens.
Danger.
And afterwards, the ducks choke on the deflated beach balls. We'll hear about that.
Hopefully not. We've got the backlit panel in here. We've got the press release. It went out March 5th. We've got, if you haven't seen the mayor's video, it's very short. It's very good. Every community has one of those. I really think that what we've done is one of the better ones. I think Mayor Brinkman did a great job with Kelly. Kelly went through and looked at other communities and said, which are the best, and then kind of model ours after that. It's worked out very well. June, July, we'll have, again, the front page of the issue. Press release April 13th, announcing the launch. Press release July 13th, announcing the upcoming meetings. We're going to have to, Kelly, we haven't talked to Kelly yet because this just happened over the weekend. So in terms of how we get the word out if we do the meeting. And I was trying to make contact today with the daycare and had no luck at all with email and phone calls. So I may go visit just so we can get on top of that. We aren't confirmed that it's actually going to work there, but the president of the HOA thought it would work. So I'm guessing that they've had meetings there themselves, and I don't know if anybody knows that, but that's what I'm guessing, so we'll find out. We've got the audio response system. We're trying it out. Glenn's been working with it. Beach balls to the outreach meetings, beach balls to the boards and commissions dinner, which should be fun. So you all will get beach balls or get to play with them. We finalized the contract for Mind Mixer. We're developing the content now for the questions that you saw last time, and we've been working on those since. So we took the edits that you had last time and incorporated those. And then Kelly's been editing it some more, and Nathan has been editing it as well. So we're getting closer, and then we'll make the changes you talked about tonight. We're publicizing the date, location. We're implementing Mind Mixer marketing playbook. They've got a really good playbook in terms of how to go through this thing, in terms of what needs to be done when. It's been very effective for us. And we're going a little bit beyond that. They have their own publicizing and marketing program they put together. I think we've gone beyond that, too, just because Kelly, we're unique, I think, in terms of having the kind of marketing capability that we have inside the city. You can kind of see the detail of all this stuff. But anyway, there's a ton of stuff that's going on. And we've got a pretty good idea as it goes out. And again, we can keep adding to this as we see what's working, what's not working, and how we're getting the word out. But we will continue to keep publicizing as we go along. And think that we've got a good number so far. Considering we're not even up yet, we've got I think over 50 people signed up, which is good this early. So we keep going. So our percentage, I would hope, would be better than Omaha's. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. We've got a lot of interested citizens. I think will get involved for it. Okay. So this kind of answer what you're looking for. Okay.
That's good. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Next item on the agenda was the proposed task force on Main Street Historic District incentives.
I can address that. So at the last HPB meeting, there was some discussion around the incentive program for companies or buildings to opt into the Historic Preservation District. And, they're looking for more and different incentives because, we'd like to get a higher percent. I think the percent right now is about 50. And so we'd like to get a higher percent of the buildings in the district to opt in, and they're looking for incentives. And the idea here is that there'd be an 8 or 9 person committee made up of people from council, Historic Preservation Board, some business representation from downtown, and Planning Commission members, really to spend a couple hours meeting and trying to decide on, what kind of incentives should we have to encourage more businesses or more buildings to opt into the district. And so we could use 1 or 2 people from the Planning Commission, and I'm looking for volunteers.
So right now, as I understand it, the incentives are primarily reduction in parking and access to grant programs for...
Yeah, and that was one of the things I was going to cover tonight. There is a grant program. It's $25,000. I think last year they did $20,000 just on one property, but there is a grant program. Applications are due by, I think, May 20th, and the decision is June 18th on who gets the grants. So, yep.
And when would the committee start? Is that starting immediately, or task force?
I don't think we nailed that down. I would guess in the next few weeks, And my guess, Glenn, tell me if you think it's different, is probably 2 or 3 hours total commitment to it. And
I would think so, yeah. Bill Hopping from Historic Preservation was been put in charge, so he's putting together some ground rules and things. But, yeah, I think Matt's exactly right. It shouldn't be, it's really going to be a brainstorm activity, perhaps prioritize what additional incentives might be out there and report to council. I think that's the process.
Are there any, you mentioned businesses, Planning Commission, Historic Preservation Board, Council, would there be any residents then?
I don't think that was really mentioned because, if you look at the district, it's along Main Street and sort of around the corner a little bit down at the west end. So I don't really think so. I guess I wouldn't rule it out, but.
Do we have any volunteers that'd be interested in serving? Mark? Okay.
Alternate heaven here.
Okay. Mark and Andrew?
Okay. Thank you.
You say, should have, before I raised my hand, you said it was about a 3-4 hour commitment total?
No, I would guess 2 or 3
Total, or is that
hours.
per meeting?
Per week, I think.
Thank you. Please clarify. Would you, seriously.
I think, 2 or 3 hours total.
3 meetings, hour each, I would see that would do it.
Okay, so my rule of thumb is whatever you think, double it, and double it again, and you might be close. Okay. What are the percentage of businessmen that would be part of the committee, or has that been figured?
I'd say probably a fourth.
Easily. It should be at least that, yeah. Maybe.
Are building owners part of that as well?
Yeah. That's really what they're looking for, is downtown business / building owners to participate in it. So, and they don't want it to be too big, right? If you get it too big, you're stuck in the mud. You're not going to make any decisions. So that's why they're looking at 8 or 9 people total.
Okay.
Great. Thank you very much.
Well, good. Well, I don't think we have anything else specific on the agenda unless there's any topics that anybody would like to bring up. We could probably entertain a motion for adjournment half hour early.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Well, thank you. See you 3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
May 14th.
Well done, Mr. Chairman.
There's something about